A call arrives when it no longer can save anyone. Welcome to Wolfe's Casebook. I am your host, Enigma. Tell me your location in the comments. Your voices make this special. Let's start. If the telephone had any sense of timing, it would have rung before Wolfe's beer. That's not a poetic flourish. It's a hard fact with consequences. Fritz had set the small tray on the corner of Wolfe's desk at exactly 11:30, because Fritz does nothing at about, or nearly. And Wolfe, planted in his red leather chair behind the desk like a monument that had decided to start charging fees, had already turned his attention from the morning mail to that pale golden glass, as if it were a scientific specimen whose cooperation was expected. I was in my chair, the one for employees who are paid to watch Wolfe and keep him from being bored into homicide, flipping through a report I dictated for our files. If you want to know what it's like to work for Nero Wolfe, picture a glacier with an expense account. He doesn't hurry, he doesn't budge, and he expects the landscape to arrange itself around him. The phone rang at 11:31. Wolfe didn't move. His eyes didn't even shift toward the instrument. He lifted the beer, regarded it for the briefest instant, then sipped. The phone rang again. I set my report down and reached for it, not because Wolfe couldn't, but because Wolfe wouldn't, unless there was a reason. And if there was a reason, it was mine to discover and handle before it reached the level of reason Wolfe recognizes. "Office," I said. A man's voice, tight, neat, too controlled, came through as if he had compressed his panic into a narrow tube. "Nero Wolfe? You've got Archie Goodwin," I told him. "Wolfe's here. Who's calling?" There was a pause long enough for me to picture him swallowing something he didn't want to taste. Then, "My name is Adrian Klein. I need to speak to Wolfe, now." Wolfe's eyes flicked up, barely. Fritz, in the doorway, had done his usual vanishing act, which is to say, he had departed without seeming to move at all. I kept my voice easy. "Mr. Klein, Wolfe isn't fond of the word need on the telephone. What's the matter?" Another pause. Then the words came out clipped, like he was cutting himself on them. "I received a call, 20 minutes ago, from my wife. If you've lived in New York long enough, you can hear the difference between drama and trouble. Drama has extra syllables. Trouble is economical." "All right," I said. "Where is she?" "That's the point," he snapped, and the control frayed for half a second. "She's dead." I didn't look at Wolfe. I didn't have to. The temperature in the room changed in the way it does when someone opens a door to winter. "Mr. Klein," I said, "if your wife is dead, you should be talking to the police." "I have," he said. "They're talking to me. They're talking to everyone. They're—" He stopped, took another breath, and returned to neat. The call came too late. "She called me to warn me, Mr. Goodwin. She called me to tell me not to do something. She said, 'Don't sign it. Don't you dare sign it.' And then—" He made a sound that might have been a laugh if you were cruel. "And then the line went dead." "How do you know she's dead?" "Because an hour later, Lieutenant Rowcliffe called me. He asked if I was Adrian Klein. He asked when I'd last spoken to my wife. He asked where I'd been last night between 10 and midnight. Then he informed me that Helen Klein was found at her office this morning, at 8:10 by her assistant." "Found how?" "On the floor," he said, "behind her desk. She was—" He stopped again, and when he resumed, his voice had gone very flat. "She was murdered." Murder does things to a man's voice. It can make it louder, softer, or simply remove all the tone and leave only the words. "Hold on," I said, and put my hand over the mouthpiece. "A man named Adrian Klein. His wife called him 20 minutes ago to warn him not to sign something. Now she's been found murdered." Wolfe's lids lowered. He took another sip of beer. "And he wants me," Wolfe said, as if that were the only stable object in a world of nonsense. I went back to the phone. Mr. Klein, Wolfe's listening. What is it you want? I want him to tell me what she meant, Klein said. And who killed her? Because Rowcliffe is looking at me like I'm a folded knife. That made sense. People with money tend to assume they can buy safety. When they learn they can't, they buy expertise. Wolfe, in our line, is expertise with a price tag and a temper. Where are you calling from? I asked. My office, he said. Midtown, Klein and Harrow. What do you do? He hesitated, like he'd forgotten his own biography. We represent corporate interests, mergers, acquisitions, negotiations. Corporate interests, I repeated, to let Wolfe hear it. Wolfe's mouth compressed. I can be there in 20 minutes, Klein said quickly. I can come to Wolfe. I'll come to the brownstone. Wolfe's voice cut in, deep and calmly irritated. Mr. Klein. The man on the line went silent as if someone had switched off his lungs. You are aware, Wolfe said, that I do not accept cases by telephone. Come to my office at 2 o'clock. Bring whatever you intend to sign. Bring whatever you were warned not to sign. And bring the precise words your wife spoke. Klein said, 2 o'clock? But... Wolfe's eyes narrowed. You have already spoken to the police. You will speak to them again. It would be useless for me to interfere before I have facts. 2 o'clock. Klein swallowed audibly. All right, 2 o'clock. Wolfe hung up without farewell because he considers courtesy a luxury item he won't buy unless it's on sale. I set the receiver down. You want him here, I said. I want the object of the warning here, Wolfe corrected. If his wife was murdered. He paused, and I knew he was choosing a word that would land exactly where he wanted it. And if she took the time to call him, then the warning concerns motive. Motive is the hinge of comprehension. Or she was just being dramatic, I said. Some people like last words. Wolfe's gaze settled on me as if I'd offered him a sandwich made of sawdust. Archie, if you persist in substituting frivolity for thought, I shall be compelled to consider a different employee. I grinned because Wolfe threatens to fire me about as often as he threatens to eat less. Sure, I'll start packing my toothbrush. He ignored that, because ignoring me is one of his hobbies. Call Inspector Kramer, he said. I blinked. Already? Already, Wolfe said. Lieutenant Rowcliffe is competent, but he is not in charge. This will involve people with money and influence. That will attract police attention, like sugar attracts ants. I prefer that the ant I deal with be familiar. I picked up the phone again, dialed, and got transferred through the usual labyrinth to homicide. After 2 minutes of being placed on hold by a voice that sounded like it was chewing gum made of gravel, Inspector Kramer came on. Goodwin, he said. What is it? I gave him the headline version. Helen Klein, found murdered at her office. Husband Adrian Klein just called us. Says his wife phoned him before it happened, told him not to sign something. He's coming here at 2. There was a beat. Kramer's voice changed just a shade. Helen Klein is dead, according to the husband and Rowcliffe, I said. You got it on your desk. I got it, Kramer said, and I don't like it. Because it's murder, I offered helpfully. Because it's money, he growled. Klein and Harrow and Helen Klein, she was counsel on something big. If she's dead, half the city's going to pretend it's a tragedy, and the other half is going to count the profits. Tell Wolfe to keep his fat hands off it. I glanced at Wolfe, who sat with his beer like an emperor who had just been informed the barbarians were at the gate and found it mildly interesting. I'll pass along your affectionate message, I said. But you know Wolfe. The more you tell him not to, the more he'll do it. Kramer snorted. Where's Rowcliffe? On it, I said. According to Klein, Rowcliffe called him. Damn it, Kramer said. All right, I'll be there. If Klein's coming to Wolfe's, I'll be there, and I want to talk to him before Wolfe fills his head with theories. I smiled into the phone. 2 o'clock, Inspector. I heard you, Kramer snapped and hung up. I replaced the receiver and reported to Wolfe. Kramer says keep your fat hands off it. Wolfe's mouth twitched, which is his idea of humor. He's not without charm. So what's the angle? I asked. You don't usually jump when a stranger calls, especially a corporate lawyer with a dead wife. Wolfe's eyes returned to the beer for a moment, as if consulting it. Sanctity, he said, is a concept you often abuse, Archie, but you recognize it. My house is my sanctuary. If I permit Mr. Klein into it, it is because the circumstances will reach into it regardless. Better to manage the intrusion than to suffer it. That was Wolfe talk for. Trouble was coming whether we liked it or not. I leaned back and stretched my legs. All right, 2 o'clock. He brings the thing he's supposed to sign. He brings the exact words. You sit there and do the mental heavy lifting. I do the running around and get shot at. Not necessarily shot, Wolfe said mildly. We may be fortunate. Sure, I said. We may be struck by lightning indoors, too. At 12, Fritz brought lunch as if murder had never been invented. Wolfe ate with the solemnity of a judge weighing evidence. I ate like an employee who expected the afternoon to become expensive. At 1:30, I checked the office the way I always do when outsiders are due. Straightened the chairs, moved a paperweight, made sure there was nothing on Wolfe's desk that would tempt a hand that shouldn't be there. The brownstone is not merely Wolfe's home, it's his instrument, and instruments don't like fingerprints. At 1:58, the doorbell rang. I went to the front hall, opened the door, and got my first look at Adrian Klein. He was in his early 40s, tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been argued into shape. His hair was dark and neat, his eyes a pale gray that made you think of cold steel. He carried a slim leather portfolio tucked under one arm like it was an organ he couldn't survive without. Behind him, on the sidewalk, was a second man, shorter, stockier, hat pulled down, and familiar enough to make me sigh. Inspector Kramer stepped up, nodded at me without warmth, and said to Klein, "You're coming with me." Klein's jaw tightened. "I'm coming to speak to Nero Wolfe." Kramer jerked a thumb toward the door. "You can speak to him with me standing there, or you can speak to him later in my office with a stenographer. Your choice." Klein looked past Kramer into the brownstone like it was a lifeboat. Then he gave a little nod, stiff. "Fine. With you standing there." I stood aside. "Come on in, gentlemen. Welcome to the sanctity." Kramer shot me a look that promised future punishment, and Klein stepped over Wolfe's threshold like a man entering a courtroom where he didn't know if he was the plaintiff or the defendant. As I closed the door, Klein's portfolio shifted slightly under his arm, and for a fraction of a second I saw the edge of a thick document inside. Heavy paper, multiple signatures already on it. The kind of thing people kill over without blinking if the number at the bottom has enough zeros. The call that came too late had brought its shadow to our front hall, and Wolfe, upstairs in his office, was waiting. Kramer took the lead the way he always did when he was determined to remind a room who owned the badge. He walked into Wolfe's office without waiting for an invitation, stopped just short of the desk, and planted his feet as if the rug had been issued to him by the city. Klein followed a step behind, hesitated, then sat when I nudged a chair into his knees. Wolfe regarded both of them with the mild interest he usually reserved for beetles that might be useful if pinned correctly. "Sit down, Inspector," Wolfe said. "You are blocking my view." Kramer didn't sit. He took his hat off, slapped it against his thigh once, and said, "This isn't a social call, Wolfe." "No," Wolfe agreed. "It rarely is." Klein cleared his throat. It was a small sound, but it scraped. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, leaning forward, hands tight on the portfolio. "Thank you for seeing me." Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. "You have already inconvenienced me. Gratitude is unnecessary." His eyes shifted to the portfolio. "You have brought the document." "Yes," Klein said. "I haven't signed it." Wise, Wolfe said, without asking why. Kramer finally sat heavily in the chair to my right. Before you go spinning theories, Wolfe, this man's wife was murdered sometime after 10 last night. She was found at her office this morning. There are no miracles here. On the contrary, Wolfe said mildly, there is at least one. Mrs. Klein telephoned her husband shortly before her death. That requires explanation. Klein swallowed. She sounded... He stopped, closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. She sounded urgent, afraid, but controlled. Helen was always controlled. She said, Adrian, listen to me. Do not sign it. Don't you dare sign it. If you do, everything falls apart. I asked her what she meant. She said, I can't explain now. Then the line went dead. Did you call back? I asked. Yes, immediately. There was no answer. Wolfe's fingers touched lightly, forming a steeple. At what time was this call received? Klein glanced at his watch as if the habit were involuntary. 10:42 p.m. Kramer snorted. Convenient. Klein's head snapped around. You think I'm lying? I think you're a husband with motive, Kramer said. That's my job. And mine, Wolfe said smoothly, is to think. Inspector, restrain yourself. Your conclusions are premature. Kramer glared but didn't interrupt. Wolfe turned back to Klein. Where were you at 10:42? At my apartment, Klein said. Alone. I had returned from a dinner meeting at 9:30. With whom? Daniel Harrow, my partner. Wolfe's eyebrows rose a millimeter. You dine with your partner late at night to discuss documents that require urgent signatures. Klein hesitated. Yes. That was interesting enough to deserve silence. Wolfe let it stretch until Klein shifted. The document, Wolfe said at last. You will place it on my desk. Klein's fingers tightened on the portfolio. He glanced at Kramer, who nodded curtly. Klein stood, walked the 2 steps forward, and laid the document on Wolfe's blotter as if it might detonate. Wolfe did not touch it. He leaned forward slightly and read the title page where it faced him upside down. I couldn't see the words, but I saw Wolfe's eyes narrow. A merger agreement, Wolfe said. Complex, lucrative, and contentious. You recognize it? Klein asked. I recognize the species, Wolfe said. Not the individual. That will come later. He looked at Klein again. Your wife opposed this agreement. Yes, Klein said, vehemently. Yet she worked on it. She believed in the firm, Klein said. She believed in doing her job even when she disagreed. Admirable, Wolfe murmured. And inconvenient. Kramer leaned forward. You're not saying she was killed over a contract. I'm saying, Wolfe replied, that people are killed over less. I shifted in my chair. Who else knew about this deal? Klein took a breath. 4 people besides myself and Helen. Daniel Harrow, Margaret Sloane, the opposing counsel, Victor Raines, the principal investor, and Helen's assistant, Laura Brent. 4 people, Wolfe said. All with access to the information, all with interest. He looked at Kramer. Have you spoken to them? Some, Kramer said. Harrow's lawyered up. Sloane's indignant. Raines is in Zurich. The assistant's shaken. Wolfe nodded. Naturally. Klein's voice broke through, sharp. That's why I'm here. Helen didn't just disagree with the deal. She was afraid of it. She told me, weeks ago, that there was something wrong, something hidden. What? Wolfe asked. She wouldn't say, Klein said. She said if she could prove it, she'd stop it. And she did not, Wolfe said softly. Instead, she called you. Yes. Then whatever she feared was imminent, Wolfe said. Inspector, when was Mrs. Klein's death estimated? Between 10:50 and 11:30, Kramer said. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, as if aligning pieces. So, The call came too late to save her, but not too late to alter events. He opened his eyes. "Mr. Klein, you have not signed this document today." "No, you will not sign it," Wolfe said. "Not yet." Kramer started to object, then stopped. "You can't tell him that." "I can," Wolfe said, "and he will listen, because he wishes to remain alive and solvent." Klein nodded quickly. "I won't sign anything." "Good," Wolfe said. "Archie." I straightened. "Yes, sir." "You will begin with Mrs. Klein's assistant. Observe. Do not accuse. Then you will speak with Mr. Harrow, who will resent you. That is acceptable. Return with facts." Kramer stood. "You're turning this into one of your games, Wolfe." "No," Wolfe said calmly. "I'm turning it into comprehension, which you may then use." Kramer looked at Klein. "You stay available." "I will," Klein said. Kramer jammed his hat back on. "I don't like this," he said, mostly to the room. Wolfe's mouth curved faintly. "Inspector, that is because you prefer answers to questions. Questions are where truth begins." Kramer left without another word. I followed him to the door, saw him down the steps, then came back. Klein sat rigid, staring at the document as if it might crawl. Wolfe regarded him. "You will remain here until Archie returns," he said. "Fritz will bring you coffee. Do not touch anything." Klein nodded, obedient now. I grabbed my jacket. As I did, my eye caught on something small and wrong. One of Wolfe's paperweights, a heavy brass globe, had been shifted a few inches from its usual place on the desk. Wolfe hadn't touched it. I knew that much. Neither had I. I said nothing. Not yet. I headed for the door, already feeling the familiar tug of a case tightening around the brownstone, and wondered, not for the first time, how many signatures it took to justify a death. I took the stairs 2 at a time, not because I was eager, but because moving fast helps you think when the questions start stacking up and you don't like the order they're in. Wolfe had planted me on a straight line, assistant first, partner second. That meant downtown, a cab, and the faint but persistent feeling that the brownstone had already been nudged out of balance. Laura Brent worked in the same building where Helen Klein had died, a glass and limestone slab that tried to look neutral and succeeded only in looking expensive. The lobby guard recognized my expression as the kind that usually came with bad news and let me through with a nod. Up on the 17th floor, the office still smelled faintly of disinfectant and shock. People avoid places where something final has happened. The air remembers. Brent was at her desk, hands folded, posture too straight. She was in her late 20s, brown hair pulled back with care that had gone a little frayed. Her eyes flicked up when I approached, then down again, like she was bracing. "Miss Brent?" I said. "Yes," she said quickly. "You're Archie Goodwin," I said. "I work for Nero Wolfe." That did it. Her hands tightened. "I already spoke to the police." "I know," I said. "I won't take long." She hesitated, then gestured to a chair. I sat, took in the desk. Neat, but not obsessive. A legal pad with today's date and nothing written. A framed photo turned face down. "You found Mrs. Klein this morning," I said. "Yes." Her voice didn't waver, but her fingers betrayed her, rubbing thumb to knuckle. "She always came in early. When she didn't answer my messages, I used my key." "What time?" 8:10, she said. "I called the police at 8:12. "Was anything disturbed?" I asked. She frowned. "No. Everything looked normal, except—" She stopped. "Except?" I prompted. "There was a folder on her desk," she said slowly. "A red one. It wasn't usually there." "What kind of folder?" "Internal," she said. "Not client-facing." "Did you open it?" "No," she said quickly. "I didn't touch anything." "Did the police?" I asked. "They took it," she said. "They asked me what it was. I didn't know." I nodded. Last night, did Mrs. Klein stay late? Yes. Alone? She said she was waiting for a call, Brent said. From whom? She didn't say. Did she seem afraid? Brent hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Not panicked, focused, like she was racing something. Did she make any calls? I heard her on the phone around 10:30, Brent said. I was finishing something. She closed her door, but I heard her say, "You have to trust me." That's all? Yes. I leaned back. Miss Brent, did Mrs. Klein trust anyone here? Brent looked down. She trusted the work, she said. People, less so. I stood. Thank you. As I turned to go, she spoke again. Mr. Goodwin, yes? She told me once, Brent said, that contracts don't kill people. Secrets do. That stayed with me as I rode the elevator down. Daniel Harrow's office was 5 blocks away and 3 pay grades higher in atmosphere. His receptionist smiled like it was policy. Harrow himself made me wait, which told me he was either busy or performing. When he finally came out, he was all silver hair and contained irritation. Mr. Goodwin, he said, I've been advised not to speak to you. Then this will be brief, I said. When did you last see Helen Klein? Last night, he said. Dinner. With Adrian. Where? Le Bernardin. Topics? The merger, Harrow said. Among other things. Did Helen oppose it? She was cautious, Harrow said. That's her nature. Enough to get her killed. His eyes flashed. That's offensive. So is murder, I said mildly. Did Helen discover something? Harrow's jaw tightened. If she did, she didn't share it. Did you call her after dinner? No. Did Adrian? I assume so, Harrow said. They were married. I smiled faintly. Sometimes that means less than you think. Harrow leaned closer. You should be careful, Mr. Goodwin. Always, I said. When I left, I wasn't satisfied. Harrow had been too smooth, too prepared. Lawyers who have nothing to hide still bristle. Lawyers who are hiding something Polish. Back at the brownstone, it was just past 6. Fritz let me in with his usual nod. The house felt quiet in the way that precedes a storm. In Wolfe's office, Klein sat exactly where I'd left him, coffee untouched. Wolfe looked up when I entered. Report, he said. I gave him everything. Brent. The red folder, Harrow's dinner, the overheard phone call. Wolfe listened, eyes half-lidded. The folder, he said at last. Red. Yes. And the paperweight, Wolfe added. I blinked. You noticed? I noticed my desk, Wolfe said. It was moved. By whom? Klein demanded. By someone with access, Wolfe said calmly. And motive. Klein stood. Someone was here? Perhaps, Wolfe said. Or perhaps someone wished me to believe so. There was a knock at the door. Fritz opened it to Saul Panzer, hat in hand, eyes sharp. You called, Saul said. Yes, Wolfe said. You will observe Mr. Klein. Klein stiffened. Observe? Discreetly, Wolfe said. Tonight. Saul nodded. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, the red folder is pivotal. The police have it, which is unfortunate but manageable. Tomorrow, you will speak to Margaret Sloane. And tonight? I asked. Wolfe's gaze drifted to the paperweight. Tonight, we wait. Someone has already disturbed my house. That is rarely done without purpose. As if on cue, the phone rang. I answered. Office, a familiar voice said. Goodwin, it's Rowcliffe. Yes? We've got a problem, he said. The red folder from Helen Klein's desk. It's gone. I looked at Wolfe. He closed his eyes briefly, then smiled. Gone, I repeated. Vanished, Rowcliffe said. From evidence. Wolfe opened his eyes. Archie, he said softly, the circle is tightening. And somewhere between the vanished folder and the moved paperweight, I knew the sanctity of the brownstone had already been breached more deeply than any of us wanted to admit. Rowcliffe's voice was still in my ear, waiting for a reaction, so I gave him one that wouldn't commit me to anything. "Gone how?" "Gone as in it was logged, sealed, and put in a locker," he said. "And now the locker's empty." "Broken into?" "No sign of it," Rowcliffe said. "Seal intact. That's what's giving the boys indigestion." I glanced at Wolfe. He had shifted slightly in his chair, which for him is the equivalent of standing up and pacing. "Who had access?" I asked. "That's the problem," Rowcliffe said. "Too many people. Evidence clerks, supervisors. And before you say it, no, your boss didn't waltz in and take it." "Wouldn't dream of suggesting it," I said. "You want us out of it?" There was a pause. "I want answers," Rowcliffe said. "If Wolfe's got any bright ideas, now would be a good time." I hung up and reported. Wolfe absorbed it without comment, then turned his attention to Klein, who looked like a man watching his own house burn from across the street. "You see," Wolfe said gently, "how rapidly this progresses." Klein's voice was tight. "You said not to sign." "I haven't signed." "What more do you want from me?" "Patience," Wolfe said, "and accuracy." He looked at Saul Panzer. "Mr. Panzer will accompany you home. He will remain in proximity. You will not deviate from your routine without informing him." Klein nodded, subdued. Saul tipped his hat and ushered him out. When the door closed, the room felt marginally safer, which told me it wasn't. Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, the disappearance of that folder is an act of confidence." "Confidence?" I said. "Looks like desperation from where I'm sitting." "On the contrary," Wolfe said. "Desperation is noisy. This was silent." "Someone believes they are untouchable." "Someone inside the police?" I asked. "Or someone with influence over it," Wolfe said. "We must not assume incompetence where manipulation suffices." I leaned against the desk. That folder was internal. Whatever was in it scared Helen enough to make the call. "Yes," Wolfe said, "and to remain in her office late at night." "Meaning she expected someone," I said. "Or feared interruption," Wolfe corrected. "Archie, consider, the call was not a plea for rescue. It was an instruction. Do not sign. That implies sequence. The signature was to follow the call." "Which means the deal was scheduled to close today," I said. "Precisely," Wolfe said. "And yet it has not." I nodded. "Because Klein didn't sign." "And because the document remains incomplete," Wolfe said. "Which frustrates at least one other party." The phone rang again. This time I didn't beat Wolfe to it. He gestured me forward with a flick of his fingers. "Office," I said. Inspector Kramer's voice came through rawer than usual. "I just heard about the folder." "Word travels," I said. "Don't get smart," he snapped. "I want to know if Wolfe has anything he's not sharing." I relayed that. Wolfe responded calmly. "Tell the inspector that withholding speculation is not obstruction." I translated that into English. "He says he's thinking." Kramer exhaled loudly. "Damn it. Listen, Margaret Sloane is flying in tomorrow morning. Zurich man is still in Zurich. Harrow's been pacing like a cat in a room full of rocking chairs." "Which suggests," Wolfe said, "that the balance has shifted." Kramer muttered something unprintable and hung up. I poured myself a glass of water. "Sloane tomorrow, Rains unavailable." Harrow agitated. "Evidence disappearing. That leaves us with a lot of motion and very little ground." Wolfe regarded me. "You will provide the ground. Tonight." I blinked. "You want legwork now?" "Yes," Wolfe said. "Return to the scene." "The office?" I said. "The building," Wolfe said. "Observe the night staff, the cleaning crews, those who see without being seen." That made sense. Crime scenes don't end when the chalk goes down. They linger in the margins. I grabbed my coat and headed out again, leaving Wolfe to his thoughts and his orchids, which I suspect he trusts more than people. The building was quieter at night, stripped of its daytime pretense. I talked my way past the guard with a combination of charm and my best imitation of authority. On the 17th floor, a cleaning crew worked methodically, headphones in, eyes down. I watched for a while before speaking to a woman polishing the glass outside Helen Klein's office. "Busy night," I said. She shrugged. "Always." "You here last night?" I asked. "Yes." "Anything unusual?" She paused, then nodded toward the office door. "Man came, late." "What time?" "After 10, she said. "Maybe 10:30. "Who was he?" "White, suit. Looked important." "Did he go inside?" "Yes." "Alone?" She nodded. "He had a key." That narrowed things fast. "Anyone else?" I asked. She thought. "Another woman, earlier." "Description?" "Tall, blonde, sharp," she said. "Angry." Margaret Sloane fit that like a glove. I thanked her and left, mind already assembling a picture that didn't like the light. Back at the brownstone, it was close to midnight. Fritz had long since retired. Wolfe was still in his chair, reading. "Report," he said without looking up. I gave it to him, the man with the key, the woman earlier, the timing. Wolfe closed his book. "So, Mrs. Klein was not alone by design, but by intrusion." "Which man?" I asked. "Harrow or Klein?" Wolfe's eyes lifted. "Mr. Klein has no key to his wife's office." I frowned. "Harrow." "Likely," Wolfe said, "but motive remains incomplete." "And Sloane?" I said. "She is the wedge," Wolfe said. "Not the hammer." I exhaled. So Harrow confronts Helen late. She calls her husband, warns him not to sign, then something intervenes, Wolfe said. "Possibly a third party." I leaned forward. "And the folder?" Wolfe's mouth curved faintly. "The folder is leverage. Its disappearance tells us who fears it." The phone rang again. Sharp in the quiet house. I answered. Saul Panzer's voice came through. "Klein's home, all quiet." "Good," I said. Wolfe listened, then said, "Archie, tomorrow we will end this." "How?" I asked. "By assembling those who believe themselves indispensable," Wolfe said, "and demonstrating otherwise." I looked around the office. The desk, the chairs, the shifted paperweight that still hadn't been returned to its exact place. "For tonight," I said. Wolfe settled back. "For tonight, we allow them to make their final mistakes." And I had the uneasy feeling that someone, somewhere, was already doing just that. By 4 o'clock, Wolfe's office had acquired that particular density of air it gets when people know they're about to be weighed and found wanting. Fritz had arranged the chairs with ceremonial precision. Wolfe sat immobile behind his desk, hands folded, eyes serene, as if he were presiding over a dinner rather than an intellectual execution. They came in one by one. Adrian Klein first, pale, contained, a man who had spent the day learning how thin his footing was. Saul Panzer took a chair against the wall, unobtrusive and alert. Daniel Harrow followed, silver-haired, jaw tight, irritation barely leashed. Margaret Sloane arrived last, posture erect, expression professionally disdainful, eyes already cataloguing exits. Inspector Kramer stood near the door, arms crossed, impatience radiating off him like heat from a radiator. Lieutenant Rowcliffe hovered just behind, notebook in hand. I closed the door. Wolfe let the silence do its work. When he spoke, it was with the unhurried certainty of a man who knows he has the only clock that matters. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I dislike assemblies. They are inefficient. However, circumstances sometimes demand inefficiency in the service of clarity." No one spoke. Wolfe turned his gaze to Sloane. "Miss Sloane, you visited Helen Klein's office yesterday evening." Sloane's chin lifted. I've already acknowledged that. You attempted, Wolfe continued, to dissuade her from interfering with the merger. I advised her, Sloane said crisply. She was out of line. Indeed, Wolfe said. She was about to expose criminal concealment. That is frequently considered out of line by those who benefit from it. Sloane's eyes flashed. If you're accusing, I am not, Wolfe said. You are not the murderer. A fractional release of tension rippled through the room. Harrow's shoulders eased slightly. Klein looked up sharply. Wolfe shifted his gaze. Mr. Harrow, you dined with the Kleins last night. Afterward, you went to Helen Klein's office. Harrow stiffened. That's absurd. You possessed a key, Wolfe said. You were seen by a cleaning employee. You confronted her. Harrow's voice sharpened. Confronted? Yes, because she was about to destroy the firm. By revealing the truth, Wolfe said. You argued. She refused to relent. At approximately 10:40, she telephoned her husband to prevent his signature. Harrow shook his head. You can't prove. Wolfe raised a hand. You left her alive. Harrow froze. I repeat, Wolfe said calmly. You left her alive. Kramer leaned forward. Then who killed her, Wolfe? Wolfe did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Adrian Klein. Mr. Klein, Wolfe said, you are an intelligent man. Tell me, why did your wife not trust you with her discovery earlier? Klein swallowed. She did. At first, then... He stopped. Then you hesitated, Wolfe said. Not because you doubted her facts, but because you feared the consequences. Klein's voice was low. The deal would have collapsed. Everything we'd built. Precisely, Wolfe said. Helen Klein realized that moral clarity and marital harmony were no longer aligned. So she documented the truth, and when she realized time had run out, she made one final attempt to stop the signature. Wolfe reached forward and slid the red folder onto the desk, where everyone could see it. Rowcliffe inhaled sharply. That folder was evidence. Yes, Wolfe said, and it vanished from police custody. Kramer spun. You want to explain that? I will, Wolfe said. But first, the murder. He looked directly at Adrian Klein. You did not go to your wife's office, Wolfe said. You did not strike her. However, Wolfe paused, allowing the word to gather weight. You made a telephone call. Klein's face drained of color. You called Victor Raines, Wolfe said. You informed him that Helen intended to expose his concealed ownership. You told him she had documentation, and you told him, perhaps inadvertently, where she was. That's insane, Klein said hoarsely. I was panicking. I didn't... You informed the most dangerous man involved, Wolfe said, that his interests were about to be destroyed. The room was silent. Victor Raines, Wolfe continued, did not require subtlety. He required certainty. He sent a man, one accustomed to removing obstacles. That man had access. He entered the office. He killed Helen Klein. Sloane stared at Klein with naked contempt. Harrow closed his eyes. And the folder? Kramer demanded. After the murder, Wolfe said, Mr. Klein became frightened. Not merely of the police, but of Raines. He realized he had unleashed something beyond his control. He wanted leverage. Klein shook his head weakly. No. You came here, Wolfe said, under the guise of seeking my help. While you sat in my office, you observed, you noted the paperweight. Later, with assistance arranged through influence, the folder was removed from police evidence. Rowcliffe stiffened. You're saying an inside man was bribed, Wolfe said. Briefly, inelegantly. And then, Kramer said. And then, Wolfe said, Mr. Klein returned to my house. I felt the room tighten. He requested the restroom, Wolfe said. Fritz admitted him. He replaced the paperweight imperfectly and concealed the folder beneath my blotter. Klein sagged into his chair. I needed protection, he whispered. "If Rains knew I had it—" "You attempted," Wolfe said, "to use me as a shield." Kramer moved forward. "Adrian Klein, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Klein did not resist. He looked only once at the red folder, as if seeing his wife for the first time. "And Victor Rains?" Rowcliffe asked. "Already notified," Wolfe said. "His plane was diverted. Swiss authorities are cooperative when evidence is tidy." Kramer let out a long breath. "Damn it, Wolfe." "Yes," Wolfe agreed. As they took Klein away, the room slowly emptied. Harrow subdued, Sloane furious but intact, the police burdened with fresh paperwork and reluctant admiration. When the door finally closed, silence returned to the brownstone like a familiar, forgiving blanket. Fritz appeared, as if summoned by equilibrium itself. "Dinner is ready," he said. Wolfe nodded. "Excellent timing." I lingered a moment, looking at the desk, the folder now absent, the paperweight precisely placed. "You know," I said, "most people would have missed the phone call as just another tragic detail." Wolfe rose slowly. "Archie, when a call comes too late, it is because someone ensured it would." At the table, Wolfe ate with satisfaction restored, the kind that comes from intellectual order rather than appetite alone. "Human beings," he said at last, "often mistake ambition for inevitability. They forget that choices echo." I raised my glass. "To choices," I said, "and to phones with bad timing." Wolfe sniffed. "Telephones are blameless." "People are not." Outside, the city continued its noise and nonsense. Inside, the brownstone was quiet again, exactly as Wolfe preferred it.